Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com, kind enough to join us on 104.5 The Team. In regards to the World Cup, Adrian, I'm not a big soccer guy, if you will, but I'm pretty sure that losing a game 7-1 in the World Cup semifinal is just absolutely ridiculous. Adrian, my first question, what the hell happened to Brazil?
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting game. I mean, obviously there was a part right around the middle of the first half where everything really just kind of fell apart. I think it's something where Brazil just became really unraveled. They lost their discipline. Tactically, everyone was pretty much just all over the place, and it looked like once Germany got that second goal, Brazil just kind of lost their plan and just everyone decided to go rogue, basically.
How much, Adrian, do you think it was Brazil missing two starters and then the snowball effect, but also just Germany finally looking like the team that we maybe thought they would be, that machine, complete top-to-bottom team that can just decimate anyone they meet?
Yeah, I'd say it's more probably the latter. I think culturally, I think there's definitely a difference between those two teams with how they really operate. Germany is a team that really focuses on everybody being in the right place, and as they're moving forward, they just stick to the game plan and they just keep going. It's almost like their opponent is faceless, basically. And on the other side, you have a team like Brazil. I've been in Brazil and seen the way that mentality kind of works. It's almost like once the game is almost decided and everything's pretty much in hand, they almost, resign themselves to the result and then just go back to, playing beautifully and just, let's revert back to kind of street ball and everybody doing what they want. So I think that's kind of what happened more than anything, where Germany just kept going and wasn't going to stop.
Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com on 104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. It's Armin and Levac. Joe Bianchino filling in for Jeff Levac this week. And Adrian, the faces of the Brazilian fans and the way they reacted, I said this week on the air, the way people were crying and they looked like their entire family just died in a fiery car crash. Is there any sporting event in America that would move us, that would upset us the way the Brazilians are upset this week?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I think I don't think there's anything that would be that upsetting, and I think the biggest reason why is just because of the diversity of sports within the U.S. There's avid football fans and basketball fans and things like that, but I would equate it to something like USA Basketball, for example, being upset and losing a game that they maybe shouldn't lose, or losing a tournament that they maybe shouldn't lose. I don't know how many tears would be shed over it, but I think it would be that kind of detrimental in terms of how they lost the game.
Now, Adrian, the U.S. had whatever they had a World Cup, and the question I want to ask you is, did they have a successful World Cup? Because you can look at it and say, yeah, they advanced out of the group of death, and they got farther than anyone expected, and yeah, they showed some promise for the future, but when you break it down, they went 1-2-1 and looked bad and looked dominated and looked outskilled for large portions of some of those games. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when you look at it in terms of a World Cup, I don't think it was necessarily successful or more successful than World Cups past. I would say that there is a lot more potential and a lot more upside based on, I would say, more of the structural things that have gone on in the last 4 years that have led to players like a DeAndre Yedlin or even a Fabian Johnson, for example, getting those opportunities. You look at a guy like Yedlin, who was a homegrown player, worked through some of these soccer academies that were developed really around 2011 or so, and he's come on as a player who's now 20 years old, and he's ready to be in that kind of World Cup spotlight. And you look at a guy like Fabian Johnson and even Julian Green, that really shows the reach that a guy like Jurgen Klinsmann has, where he can pick up the phone and talk to these people in Europe, these coaches, these scouts, and really get a sense of intelligence and and real kind of scouting that we really couldn't get a few years ago.
You bring up Klinsmann, and he's certainly got a lot of praise. A lot of people are pointing to him and saying, "Great job, Jurgen Klinsmann," and I can understand why he's responsible for a lot of the future that I just talked about and you talked about also. But when I look at him in this World Cup specifically, I see some tactical decisions that I didn't like. I think he invited the opposition to carry possession toward his weak back line far too often, and then leaving off Donovan, which I think was a mistake. I thought it before the tournament. I certainly thought it after the Belgium game. What do you think about Klinsmann and his World Cup? This World Cup for him.
Yeah, I think you're right on with the tactical side of things, and I think going forward, I don't think any U.S. fan should really expect a real tactical kind of acumen from Klinsmann specifically. Maybe somebody on his staff, but I think overall, again, I think his enthusiasm, his desire to set a certain standard for the U.S. team has been great, and I think it's something that is really necessary for the U.S. right now. It's something that really we haven't seen before, and hopefully it's something that will grow going forward.
Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com, kind enough to join us on 104.5 The Team, breaking down the World Cup. You can catch him on Twitter at Adrian Melvile. And Adrian, we're going to get to the preview the World Cup final this Sunday. I get it. But let's get to the important stuff here, because while the U.S. was playing, we had some of the biggest parties I've ever been a part of at Wolf's Beer Garden in downtown Albany. It is ranked the number 2 soccer bar in the country. And, dude, I'm telling you, it looked like it. In your mind, when I say number 2 soccer bar in the country, what is the proper way to watch soccer? What makes a proper soccer watching bar?
Well, I think first off, it's atmosphere for sure. It's got to be more than just the people, but it's got to be the jersey, bars. Maybe a little singing thrown in there as well. Obviously, the drink special helps too. But I would say, really getting that in, and then having a few. I personally like a mix of kind of knowledgeable fans and also new fans. So that kind of excitement can really be kind of shown through a variety of different areas. I've had the pleasure of watching with people who just kind of have an unbridled enthusiasm, and then had the displeasure of watching with people who are kind of more snobbish and think they know everything. So again, I think atmosphere is the key thing with jerseys and scarves and everyone just getting into it, but yeah, I'd say that's probably what makes the best bar in America.
And when speaking of snobbish soccer fans, a smooth transition, Joe Bianchino filling in for Jeff Levac this week, 104.5 The Team. Go ahead, Joe. It's talking to Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com. I think snobby soccer fan is like part of his Facebook profile, actually.
It's not. I may or may not own a Chelsea jersey and some Chelsea scarves, but I don't think snobbish soccer fan is where you need to go. Where do you see, Adrian, because the scene we saw at Wolf's Beer Garden was the scene across the country. Soldier Field had 40,000 some odd people in it for a soccer match. Where do you see the growth of soccer in America?
Well, I think a lot of it comes domestically. I think the next step is really getting people to turn out at MLS stadiums, show up for those games, and really support their local market. I think really when you look at it, that is where the players growing up will aspire to be in their local market. And the bigger that team is, the more important that team is, the more it will help that youth player to really understand how lucrative a potential pro contract could be. So I think that's the biggest thing, is really getting MLS involved, getting people to the stadiums, getting people to watch it on TV. And then I think from a player standpoint, it's just continuing with the coaching education, the technical development of these players, and also, again, just finding players outside of the U.S. that could help the national team.
Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com, and you spoke on the individuals who don't know much about soccer, who are constantly learning about the sport. That's me. And I would like to know if you can explain to me, why do we have a third place game? Brazil, the host, just got more embarrassed than they could ever get embarrassed. If you looked up embarrassment, it's a picture of their country. Why would they ever want to play a third place game? I understand the money side of it. Is that the only reason why the World Cup has a third place game on Saturday?
No, I'd say there are some other reasons too. I mean, I think for Brazil specifically, this is a way to kind of redeem themselves, and I think if they win that game against the Netherlands and finish in third place, I think that's something that can at least save some tears down in Brazil for sure. But I think the other reason is, it's an opportunity for all of these players to really showcase themselves. It's the biggest showcase there is for European soccer, and individually there are plenty of players who are looking for maybe a new club in the summer for next year, or maybe looking to advance their individual position. So there's definitely opportunity all around for everybody to have a third place game. It's just obviously something that's a tradition too. So something I always enjoy. It generally lends to being a more open game than the final, I would say.
So that's the consolation game. The final is Sunday. Argentina, Brazil, Messi versus the Machine. How do you see Messi matching up against that German back line, and really Argentina as a whole against the Germans?
Yeah, I think Messi's going to be obviously key. He in the game yesterday, it looked like he would kind of drift into different positions, and so I think the key for Messi will be to continue doing that and just to kind of lose track of guys in the middle of Germany's midfield. He's also going to probably need some help from Higuain up front, which will be a big task for him. So I think that's the key for Argentina. And then for Germany, they're just so solid all around that if they continue to get a lot of good work from their creative players, their Mesut Ozils, their Müllers up front, and just keep mixing and matching those players in different positions, I think they'll probably come out on top.
I know that most World Cup matches are low scoring. Is this a 1-0 game? Is this a 4-3 game? What do you see this final being, Adrian?
Yeah, I think it'll be something that is a closer game. I think especially the way Argentina played yesterday, they were really compact defensively, and they were really hard to kind of get through. So I see it being a lower scoring game, and just with the final, there's so many nerves involved for all the players. So I can't imagine it really opening up until probably the second half. But if it does, I think Germany would probably be the team to do it.
Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com. Alexi Lawless said this week that out of all the World Cups that he has seen in his lifetime, this is the best one. Where does this one rank in your mind?
I'd say it ranks pretty up there. I'd put it over 2010 for sure, and yeah, I'd say just the amount of different players, the variety of different stars from different countries, seeing really some of the power teams, your Spains and your Englands and Italy's, going down early, while a team like Costa Rica can kind of rise up, and the personalities of Mexico. I think that's what's made it so interesting and so intriguing, is that you're almost seeing a little shift in the balance of power and the globalization of the game in this World Cup. So I think for that reason alone, it's definitely been one of the best, if not the best, we've seen in a long time.
Adrian Melvile of ESPNFC.com. Go there for all your football needs, ESPNFC.com. You can follow Adrian on Twitter as well, at Adrian Melvile. Adrian, thanks so much for joining us today, talking a little World Cup. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks a lot.